Hi there, I'm Scott, or Sir Lorcan in the SCA, and I like making medieval stuff. And I like figuring out the really cool stuff that they figured out like thousands of years ago that works really, really well even now, especially when you want to remake the things that they made. Clenched nails were like a game changer for me at one point, once I realized what they were and how they could be used. And they're universal in pre-modern woodworking, just everywhere, all around the world. Doesn't matter where you look, doesn't matter when. It's an idea that basically everybody had. We have screws, and they make this a less appealing thing to do when you can get the exact size and shape of screw that you want at the hardware store really easily. But clenched nails are awesome. Old school, medieval nails are most like what we'd call cut nails today. See, this guy is actually cut into shape. This is similar to how, what you'd get if you handmade a nail by upsetting the head and stuff. There are blacksmiths that still do this, and they're very, that's an easy enough thing to do, but it's a little time consuming, and I'm not that interested in making nails. So I use ready-made nails. But you don't need a medieval style of nail to do this. Regular roofing nail, this works just fine. And if you need to get detailed, you can even take a tiny little brass escutcheon pin like this, and you can clench it. Most of what I end up using in the way of nails for this are about inch long 2D cut nails, or inch and a half 4D cut nails. Nail sizing is weird. Don't worry too much about it. But the idea behind a clenched nail is you can use a regular nail as many times as you want. You just hammer it into the wood straight, and as long as it doesn't bend, it holds because the wood fibers grip it. And that's why, you don't tend to use nails in metal. Metal doesn't grip the same way as wood fibers do. But wood wears out. And a clenched nail was also called a dead nail by a lot of people. It still is in modern English. And you'll see this sometimes on gates and stuff that are outdoors, where you're attaching hinges or parts that are going to get weathered a lot. As the wood wears, a regular nail can start to work its way out to loosen up in those wood fibers. A clenched nail can't, which is awesome. The reason it's also called a dead nail is because you can't reuse a clenched nail, not effectively. A regular straight nail that remains straight, you can just hammer that into something else. A clenched nail, you actually bend the tip over so that now the head and the tip are clenching whatever this has been driven through. And that makes it hold really well and really durably. But once it's bent, it's of no practical use if you tear that thing apart. Since bits of iron were kind of valuable back in the day, reusing nails was a legit thing. And so you'd say, oh, here's a good nail, there's a dead nail, that one's been used, chuck it, melt it back down, really. You gotta recycle that sucker into something else instead of just reuse it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some pieces of wood. I'm going to show how I would do this, go through the technique of actually clenching the nail, and try to explain why it's neato. For some real-life examples, if you look very closely on my shield here, these are little bitty brass nails, 14 gauge, round-headed brass nails, that are holding the decorations to my shield. They've been driven through a pre-drilled hole and then hammered over, and these have not been clenched really well in my terms. They've been folded over and they've been driven back into the wood while the head was supported by an anvil. So what I've got here is basically like a rivet for wood. You don't just want to start hammering and expand a rivet into wood. That doesn't hold nearly as well as this hooked over shape. This is also how my handle is attached to the board. It's a nail. It goes all the way through and is clenched over. And it's rock solid. You can also make clench nail into hooks. This one, I used too beefy a nail and the wood has cracked. My mistake. I did it on my prior shield with a thinner nail that bent a little more easily, and that one's still holding on great. So I learned my lesson. On my next shield, I'll use a little smaller nail. So for starters, we're just going to attach 2 pieces of plywood to one another. I'm going to start by pausing this and drilling a hole. I want the hole that I drill to be a little bit bigger around than the very tip of my nail, but not as big around as the shank. I want this to be wedged really firmly into that wood. I don't want it to be just bouncing around. So I'm going to drill a hole probably around 3/30 seconds for this guy, and then I'll come back.